They said I was interfering with community progress. That was the excuse the HOA president used after she demolished my handmade workshop without permission. She thought she could scare me into silence, but what she destroyed that day was not just timber and tools. Kit was the trigger that exposed her web of bribery, fake permits, and the money laundering scheme that nearly swallowed our whole town. My name is Mark Ellis. I am 45 years old, a mechanic by trade, and a homeowner in the Ridgeway Meadows community, a place that liked to advertise itself as peaceful lakeside living. It was peaceful until the HOA board decided to play king and queen over every nail and fence post in the neighborhood. When my wife Sarah and I moved here, we had one goal: to build a small workshop beside the garage so I could fix equipment for our neighbors, save them a trip to the city, and spend more time near my family. It was the same kind of life my father had when he fixed tractors for every farmer within 30 miles. I drew up blueprints, got approval from the county, and spent my weekends building. Life was steady, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Then one morning, a letter arrived, bold red lettering, at the top reading immediate violation notice. Apparently my workshop was an unapproved structure that lowered property values. The fine was $1,000 with a threat of weekly penalties if I did not remove it. I laughed out loud thinking it was a mix-up. We were part of a voluntary homeowners association, not a military camp. The next day, 3 board members showed up unannounced. They stepped into my yard in matching polo shirts embroidered with Ridgeway HOA and started taking photos. Their president, a woman named Amanda Brewer, stood with her arms crossed. She told me that if I wanted to keep my workshop, I would have to apply for retroactive approval and pay a review fee. I showed her the county permit. It was signed and sealed months before. She smirked and said that HOA jurisdiction superseded outdated county documents. That was the first time I realized she was not confused. She was confident that no one would challenge her. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and found splintered wood where my workshop used to stand. A demolition crew hired by the HOA had torn it down. My table saw, tool chests, all of it gone. Sarah stood crying beside the debris, while a man in a reflective vest handed me a paper titled Emergency Abatement Order. The signature at the bottom belonged to Amanda Brewer. That night I sat on the steps, staring at the wreckage until sunrise. My grandfather used to say a man's patience is his armor, but even armor dents when struck enough times. I called the sheriff, who politely explained that since the HOA considered it a community safety matter, it was a civil dispute. I needed to talk to a lawyer. It felt hopeless. The next day, a neighbor named Eli stopped by. He was in his late 60s, retired postal worker, the kind of man who notices everything. He said quietly, "You are not the first. 2 other families lost property to sudden code enforcement this year. Amanda bought up both lots a month later through her husband's company." Something in me snapped to attention. I started digging. At the county recorder's office, I spent 3 evenings pulling every permit and deed relating to the HOA's recent projects. A pattern emerged. Demolition orders followed by quick property transfers to a corporation called Maple Grove Investments. The listed manager was none other than Amanda's husband, Thomas Brewer. Within a year, Maple Grove flipped those lots to a developer building new lakefront townhouses. I printed copies, sent some to my old friend Dean, an investigative journalist, and the rest to a property rights attorney named Liza Quinn. When she saw the documents, she said one sentence that made everything suddenly clear. They are laundering funds through property seizures disguised as HOA enforcement. Liza advised me not to confront Amanda yet, to let the evidence stack higher. But Amanda made that impossible. One morning, she hosted an emergency meeting at the community center, accusing me of spreading lies and damaging Ridgeway's reputation. The moment I stood to defend myself, she had the security guard escort me outside. On the way out, I noticed folders on the sign-in desk with financial reports she had forgotten to collect. One page caught my eye, a line labeled Landscaping Maintenance, Payment to Brewer Grounds LLC, $130,000. There are only 19 houses in Ridgeway Meadows. That night, Sarah and I went through every image from our security cameras. Buried among ordinary clips was a scene from 3 days earlier. 2 men breaking into my workshop before it was torn down, pulling out boxes and loading them into a white truck with Brewer Grounds printed on the door. I called Liza. "That is burglary and tampering with evidence," she said. We had enough to take this straight to the district attorney. The next evening, Amanda came knocking herself, pretending concern. Mark, these accusations could hurt the whole neighborhood. It would be wise to drop them. I looked her straight in the eye and said, I am not dropping anything. Her smile never reached her eyes. Then you are forcing my hand. 2 days later, a mailbox filled with letters accusing me of harassment, threatening to sue for defamation. Flyers appeared on every community board calling me violent and reckless. Neighbors stopped waving. Some believed her. Others turned away because they were scared. That was the darkest week. Then Dean called. His investigation team had located bank transfers linking Maple Grove investments to several state officials. They published their findings in an online expose titled The HOA that ran a real estate racket. It exploded overnight. By morning, news vans were crawling through Ridgeway Meadows. The sheriff who once brushed me off returned with a warrant from the State Corruption Task Force. Amanda was arrested on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and destruction of private property. Her husband faced laundering charges. HOA accounts were frozen, and every seized lot reverted to its original owners. It took months for Ridgeway to recover. Some houses sat empty. Others began slowly to rebuild. I rebuilt my workshop exactly as it was, plank by plank, and let the smell of new pine chase away the bitterness. Sarah planted flowers where the old foundation had been torn away. Eli dropped by every few days with lemonade and stories about when towns had handshakes instead of contracts. A year later, Ridgeway Meadows is no longer an HOA at all. It is just a street with neighbors who fix each other's fences and keep one another honest. The old community center sign still hangs there. But someone painted over the letters that once read Homeowners Association. It now says Community of Makers. Sometimes tourists stop by asking about the story they saw on the news, the man who took down a corrupt HOA. I tell them all the same thing. I did not take them down alone. I just didn't let them scare me into silence. On quiet evenings, the new workshop glows with warm light. Lily's laughter floating through the open door while I teach her how to fit 2 pieces of wood together so tightly that no wind can break the seam. Why, if she remembers one lesson from all of this, I hope it is the one my father taught me, that when people treat honesty like rebellion, you stand taller, not smaller. That workshop they tore down was just lumber, but what it represented will stand as long as we keep building.